Central Texas, at least 24 people killed, and the urgent search going on right now for more than 20 girls missing from a summer camp, completely destroyed by the raging waters. ABC's Maria Villarreal is on the ground there in Kerrville, Texas. Maria, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Whit. As of right now, we are standing on the banks of the Guadalupe River, and this is not what it normally looks like. You can actually see, even though the rain has subsided for now, all of the devastation and debris clearly right behind us. Crews in this area coming from all over the place and working throughout the
yeah, we're talking about the flash floods in Texas now.
night to try and find the missing.
This morning, search and rescue crews desperately looking for the missing following the deadly floods in central Texas. The storm killing at least 24 people, with many more still missing. Families pleading for information after more than 20 children still unaccounted for from a summer camp.
I have assured all of the local officials here, whatever these communities need, the state of Texas is going to step up and provide it.
The city of Kerrville seeing some of the worst devastation, urging residents to evacuate and move to higher ground. The mayor issuing a disaster declaration as the Guadalupe River reaching 26 feet high, the second highest recorded height in history. 12 inches of rainfall in a matter of hours, flooding roads, buildings, and cars, and sweeping away houses. Entire neighborhoods left unrecognizable. This RV park completely destroyed. The same flood waters almost sweeping away this man and his wife.
We went ahead and jumped out, and we got washed down 3 houses, and we finally ended up snagged on a big bush.
Helicopters hovering over trees, performing urgent rescues like this one. Crew members picking someone out of the branches. In nearby Hunt, Texas, families urgently trying to find their loved ones at Camp Mystic, an all-girls summer camp of 750 children. More than 20 campers still missing.
We will stop at nothing to ensure that every asset and person and plane and whatever is needed is going to be involved in the process of rescuing every last person.
The camp was evacuated after flooding hit the Guadalupe River, and while some parents have been reunited with their children, others continue to wait for answers. The family of one camper, 10-year-old Greta Toranzo from Houston, telling us that their daughter is still missing.
Please pray for our community. This is a hard day, and there will be hard days to come.
Absolutely devastating, obviously, for this entire community and also for the families of the missing. Some of them are actually posting pictures just like this with their names and information of many of these campers, trying to get the word out there of what their children look like, trying to aid in the rescue and the search any way they can. Meanwhile, officials are warning this community that more rain is on the way for later today. Janae?
Just unimaginable heartbreak for those families, Maria. Thank you. Let's bring in Cheryl Scott from our Chicago station WLS. And Cheryl, what can you tell us about this flooding?
Yes, and more flooding expected through.
Texas officials blast National Weather Service for faulty forecast and deadly flood disaster. Ryan Grimm says, I could not possibly be filled with more rage after seeing Texas Republicans blame the National Weather Service forecast for the unspeakable tragedy that hit the girls' camp. You were warned this would happen if you fired everyone. You actively chose to fire as many scientists working on the federal government as possible and have even taken weather balloons out of the sky. These were people who dedicated their lives to this stuff, and you fired them so you could do tax cuts. You do not now get to complain that weather forecasts are off. Please go find these girls and rehire these scientists. It can't be known at this time what the specific effect of the cuts was. What can be known is nobody who supported all the firings gets to complain about the performance of an agency they torched. And stop letting people build in known danger zones. Do you think the warning coordination meteorologist position at the Austin San Antonio office was important? He left in April as a part of the Doge cuts, which offered early retirement to reduce the workforce. It's now vacant, part of the strategy of reducing staff through attrition.
That we received on Wednesday from the National Weather Service predicted 3 to 6 inches of rain.
This is the same as like air traffic control, reducing the numbers of air traffic control for decades and decades and decades, and then complaining that planes are either not on time or falling out of the sky It's just like they did this, they made this problem, and then they get to complain, I guess.
In the Concho Valley and 4 to 8 inches of rain in the hill country. We worked with our own meteorologists to fine-tune that weather statement, and as many of you know, and many of you in broadcast journalism and meteorology, you can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts.
This rain event sat on top of that and dumped more rain than what was forecasted on both of those forks. When we got the report, it was about 7 feet or so on the South Fork, and within a matter of minutes it was up to 29 feet, and all of that converged at the Guadalupe, and that's where we saw those very quick rise in flood.
But listen, everybody got the forecast from the National Weather Service, right? You all got it. You're all in media. You got that forecast. It did not predict the amount of rain that we saw. The original forecast that we received on Wednesday.
Texas is blaming the National Weather Service for the weather changing from the original forecast. The 3 satellites that the Department of Defense stopped allowing NOAA access data from June onward from June 30th were specifically designed to monitor rapid intensification like what occurred. If you want to point fingers, start there. We have warned about the National Weather Service and NOAA and their regular business being disrupted, not only underfunded, but like deliberately left in a state of disrepair for months at this point. And now that the chickens are coming home to roost, the fact that the very people who like played a key role in this, the party administration, the apparatus that played a role in this, the ideology that played a role in this, the ideology that also is playing a formative role in defunding FEMA as well for disaster on the disaster relief side. Make no mistake, like we're burning the candle from both ends here. Okay. We are disrupting the ways in which, like, we're not doing anything about climate change, okay? That's a given, right? That's not happening. But the fact that we are also simultaneously making it harder to predict, to take the additional steps necessary for at least like saving more lives, and then simultaneously defunding the aspects that are perhaps most necessary in the upcoming years, like FEMA, to engage in the recovery and rebuilding efforts, is insane. This is not negligence. This is deliberate. I don't know how else to read this other than like they just want people to be victim to natural disasters that are going to keep increasing in size, magnitude, frequency as a direct consequence of anthropogenic climate change. And because these sorts of any sort of real measure, any sort of real systemic solution to anthropogenic climate change is seen as like anti-capitalist and woke and communist and leftist, but because it's like harmful to the bottom line of the oil and gas giants, the fossil fuel industry, which we are firmly committed to, we are not only not doing anything about climate change, but we're also taking this additional step to reduce any sort of warning system that we had, like significantly cut back on the warning systems that we have and cut back on the recovery and relief systems that we have as well. It makes no sense. There have been claims about NOAA NWS did not foresee catastrophic Texas floods, but that's simply not true. This was undoubtedly an extreme event, but messaging rapidly escalated beginning 12 hours prior. Flood watch mid-PM, heads up, outlook late PM, flash flood warnings 1 a.m. WPC issued as many 6 MPDs for the deadly flash flooding in the Texas Hill country, starting yesterday evening and lasting through much of today. The first MPD generally set the stage for what was to come, while the next 3 shown were as the event unfolded. As always, it's not to blame the victims, quite the opposite. This truly was a sudden and massive event and occurred at the worst possible time, middle of the night. But problem, once again, was not a bad weather prediction. It was one of the last mile forecast / warning dissemination. I am not aware of the details surrounding staffing levels at the local National Weather Service offices involved, nor how that might have played into the timing and sequence of warnings involved. But I do know that locations that flooded catastrophically had at least 1 to 2 plus hours of direct warning from NWS. A big part of the problem, I think, is also, this is not victim blaming at all, but from all the Texas chatters that were in here yesterday, from what I understand, and I kind of get it from LA as well, because like we rarely have flash flood warnings, but it does happen every now and then. But oftentimes when a flash flood warning comes in, it's not as severe, right? So I think it's one of those things where people see that, especially at night. They didn't even see it most likely, but when they see it, they just ignore it because they just don't think that it's like super deadly. No one takes flash flood warnings seriously. I have received flash flood warnings in the past in Los Angeles and just went, oh well. And I guess like, especially with the frequency of flash flood warnings in a place like Texas, people most likely assumed it was just like a little thing and not as severe, not as significant. It's like, it's the worst of all events coming together. Holiday weekend, happens at night, rapid escalation going from the, 6 foot to what, like 20 plus feet out of nowhere. Like it was just it was a horrifying situation, especially when you consider that most of Texas is built on floodplains. So with no real way to have the water move through the land or have the land suck up the water. So there's also that. I don't know Texas state specifically, but usually there's also like a levee system that they have in a lot of these states that are susceptible to extreme flooding that ends up destroying some of the lower income neighborhoods in an effort to save the higher income neighborhoods. That is a real levee structure that they have in places like Louisiana, for example, where they will quite literally build levees that end up dumping more water than normal into lower income neighborhoods in an effort to save higher income neighborhoods. So there is that aspect of capitalism as well. I don't think the levee system happened here. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that is like, I'm making a broader point about how the way we design society ends up harming poor people more in events like this. I'm not saying that this is what happened in Texas. So it's basically the powder keg situation. One thing I do know is that this part of Texas Hill County is infamous for sudden and violent flood risk. That is an intrinsic product of being a hilly region with flashy watersheds subject to occasional but very extreme precipitation events arising from the bathtub warm Gulf. I'm not really clear on why a region so well known for its severe flood susceptibility apparently did not have a better warning system in place. That's something I'm sure the others with better local knowledge can dissect in greater details. But this does illustrate a few tragic and uncomfortable truths. The first is that even quite good weather forecasts do not automatically translate into life-saving predictions. There's a lot of other work that has to take place to contextualize the forecast and ensure it gets to the right people. Baba ben yedim senin şeyi. Çünkü midem bulanıyordu. The second is that the NWS historically has done a very good job at that forecast contextualization, outreach to the local governments, emergency managers, outdoor recreation facilities, etc. But that's one of the first things to go away when offices are critically understaffed. Exactly. Like, this is a suspicion, right? Because at this point, we haven't done an autopsy yet. There is no like full-blown autopsy yet as to how we got to this point, right? But the initial suspicion is that given the budget cuts and the understaffing that already exists in a lot of these agencies, it probably limits the amount of outreach they can do in a critical moment, which is precisely the reason why these agencies should not be understaffed ever at any given point, because this is a life-saving measure. It is crazy. It is crazy that this is like even a point of contention. Hold on.
Throughout the morning into the afternoon, just catastrophic damage in this region. And obviously, we've been talking about those fatalities. We are looking at some of the scenes coming out of this area, and you can just see that destruction, the raging waters. We have impact.
FEMA closure announcement is in Texas from July 2nd. Disaster recovery center closing permanently. 3 disaster recovery centers in South Texas are closing permanently. Hidalgo County, Starr and Willacy County. The following DRCs remain open: Cameron, Harlingen, Hidalgo, and West Laco. Nice. It's great. I know new party just dropped. Elon Musk dropped the new party. I know.
And destruction to homes. You can see the trees down, and then this is overlooking the Llano River in Texas right now, and you can clearly see the raging, rushing water here.
clearly overflowing its banks. More rain on the way, and that's why we do have alerts up in effect for parts of central Texas. We have that flash flood emergency, which has been issued for parts of Travis and Burnett County throughout the morning, with an additional 5 to 10 inches of rainfall in this area. So more flash flooding and destructive flooding will be a concern throughout the day today. Gio.
Okay, Cheryl, we will be following that throughout the morning, and we are thinking of those families. Thank you for that.
At least 27 people have been killed, many of them young girls, in flash floods in the U.S. state of Texas, with 27 still missing. Rescue efforts continued today in Kerr County after the equivalent of 4 months of heavy rain fell in just 2 hours in the early hours of yesterday, causing the Guadalupe River to break its banks. Several of those unaccounted for are young campers who were staying at an all-girls summer camp along the banks of the river. Heavy rain was predicted, but not like this. The River Guadalupe in central Texas transformed into a roiling flash flood as the waters rose 8 meters in the space of 2 hours, sweeping away upturned trees, plastic junk, and, it's feared, dozens of girls at a Christian summer camp a few miles upstream of the small town of Kerrville. Among the confirmed dead, 9-year-old Renee Smalstra. At least 20 of her friends are thought to still be missing. It is a terrible wait for families and friends. Billeted at a local primary school, now a makeshift reunification center.
We will do everything humanly possible 24/7, looking at every tree, turning over every rock, whatever it takes, if your child is one of those truly missing and not just out of touch, to find your daughter.
The aftermath is close to apocalyptic. Residential streets completely submerged, car roofs barely recognizable under the free-flowing waters. Entire homes lifted from their stanchions and dumped asunder. Helicopters winched survivors to safety in the midst of panic.
By the time I went to get my keys to move my truck out of the way, to just back up across the street, the water had risen and flooded my truck. The water got up there in the door about this high. And I looked at my wife and it was like, we need to get out of here.
This part of Texas is known as Flood Alley. Underneath these waters lie thin soil.
When we bought our house here in Texas, it was roughly $100K less to buy within a flood zone. It's dystopian here. If you can't afford to pay the high prices, you risk flooding over and over again. Our flood zones flood probably at least every year, a time or two, and you have to redo that house, especially when we get hurricanes, etc. Yeah. A lot of the densely populated areas of Texas are straight up on flood zones. One of the craziest parts about this, by the way, is when we say, wow, this is unprecedented. At a certain point, unprecedented is going to be precedented. It's getting to a point where all of these unprecedented events are not necessarily unprecedented at all. It's expected. And we haven't caught up yet to that reality. I feel like we always still say, like, once in a lifetime. This is a once in a lifetime situation. It's like, okay, but it's happening multiple times a year. So I don't know if it's a once in a lifetime situation, because it doesn't feel like it's a once in a lifetime situation. You can't keep saying that if it's happening multiple times a year. And at which point we have to obviously redesign society around at least prevention and also relief and recovery, when in fact the current administration is moving in the exact opposite direction of that, which is so crazy to me. It's like living next to a volcano and being like, oh, it just never explodes, and then the volcano erupts and you're like, oh, this happened once, it's fine, and then rebuilding. But then the volcano erupts again every 5 years, and then the volcano erupts again and again and again, and it erupts multiple times a year, and you're still like, Pompeii style, living in the ass cheeks of the goddamn volcano, and just saying like, no, it's fine. Also, we don't need to monitor the tectonic movements at all. We don't need to try to figure out if the volcano is going to erupt at all. And also, whatever kind of like relief and recovery efforts we need in the aftermath of the volcano, we don't need that either.
Soils, which when baked in the heat of summer, refuse to soak up thunderstorms. The water just bounces down the hills into bone-dry tributaries. Questions are being raised. Why were these rains so much heavier than predicted?
There's a lot of conspiracy theories floating around about cloud seeding. Yeah, so here's the thing. The reason why those things are increasing, like, Jewish weather machines, cloud seeding, things of that nature, the HARP weather machine gun or whatever, or chemtrails. The reason why that's happening is exactly the same reason why people go crazy mode with mass shootings as well. Mass shootings are not a natural disaster. Mass shootings are commonplace in the United States of America when it shouldn't be commonplace at all. There is a solution to mass shootings, okay? It's called gun control. But because that is never going to happen, at least with the current order of business, at least in the way that like Americans have designed society, people have to come up with different reasons for why this happened. And at first with mass shootings, it was not door control, but like, oh, these are soft targets. The teachers are not armed, but then the teachers are armed, or at least there's like a cop on site. And then they turn around and say like, oh, we got to arm the teachers. And then the teachers are armed and there's a cop on site. Then they're like, oh, we got to lock these doors, right? Anything but the actual problem. And inevitably you arrive at, when you exhaust all of those other alternative fake solutions, you inevitably will arrive at like something insane, like this is a psyop. This was cultivated. This was created by, the government or something. And it's the same thing with these natural disasters, where we know that they are increasing in size, magnitude, frequency. They are no longer extreme weather events that are once in a lifetime. It's happening numerous times throughout the year. We know what the reason is, but nobody wants to actually actively say what the reason is. And on top of that, we are underfunding the prevention methods. We're underfunding the warning systems, and we are underfunding the recovery and relief efforts. So if you don't actually literally laser in on the problem, the actual problem, you have to come up with an alternative solution. And that's precisely how you arrive at these weird conspiracy theories. That's it. Conspiracy theories are an inevitability if you are desperately avoiding the truth and you need like some sort of fantastical narrative that ties everything together. And that's why people say, oh, it's the weather machines.
The original forecast that we received on Wednesday from the National Weather Service predicted 3 to 6 inches of rain in the Concho Valley and 4 to 8 inches of rain in the Hill Country. We worked with our own meteorologists to fine-tune that weather statement, and as many of you know, and many of you in broadcast journalism and meteorology, you can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts.
Extreme weather events like hurricanes in the U.S. Deep South and fires in California are getting more frequent. It's getting harder to forecast what will happen and where. The vast majority of scientists agree that climate chaos is accelerated by humans burning fossil fuels and increased carbon and methane levels in the atmosphere. But at the same time, the climate skeptic Trump administration is cutting funding and staffing at the National Weather Service and NOAA, which conducts climate research. President Trump yesterday promised help for the communities affected. Central Texas, his MAGA heartland.
We're working with the governor. It's a terrible thing.
More heavy rainfall is expected. And while the river waters have begun to recede, the ground is sodden. The risk of further floods has not gone away.
Well, a short while ago, I spoke to Washington Post reporter Arelis Hernandez, who is in Kerr County, and I began by asking her how bad the situation is on the ground.
It's catastrophic for this particular region. Central Texas and the Hill Country is known for floods. The Guadalupe River has flooded in the past, but it seems as though people here did not have a lot of warning that this was coming. And please apologize, there are still rescue helicopters flying overhead.
Yeah.
And people woke up in the middle of the night to rising water all along the Guadalupe River. So where I am, as well as upstream from here, more than 800 rescues were conducted throughout since yesterday morning into today. And those efforts are continuing, waiting to hear whether they will indeed turn into more recovery efforts. So far, I believe 27 is the death toll, and there's still about more than 24 child campers missing.
And that is the horror of this. There are many families that woke up this morning to discover that their daughters may be missing.
Indeed, Camp Mystic is well known throughout the city of Texas. It receives little girls from all across, from Beaumont to Dallas to from Houston, and there were parents who were on their way here to find out whether they would be reunited with their children or if their daughter was among those who are still unaccounted for.
And are there other camps that may be stranded and potentially missing kids?
Well, this is an area popular and a big part of the economy out here, these summer camps, particularly summer youth camps, as well as sort of religious camps. There are about 18 of them. And so there was a similarly situated boys camp, La Junta, that had to be evacuated. As far as we know right now, none of those boys were lost in the water. Most have been evacuated to reunification centers at local high schools, as well as an activity center here not too far away.
And are people angry that the weather forecast didn't predict this huge amount of rain?
I think people are still in the throes of rescue and trying to figure out and put their heads together and processing what has happened here. It's absolutely devastating. I know this area personally. I tube down this river from time to time. I spend a lot of here.
Private weather companies putting blame on local officials. AccuWeather sent warnings ahead of Texas flooding that killed at least 27. These warnings should have provided officials with ample time to evacuate camps such as Camp Mystic and get people to safety, the company said. AccuWeather sent warnings ahead of Texas flooding. Wait, AccuWeather is AccuWeather is the weather forecasting company that gets all of its information from the NWS. AccuWeather's the one that wants to make the NWS privatize, right? So they can control all of the flow of information for commerce and everything else that's like necessary. They want to make that a monopoly market. They want to control all of the information on weather.
Time up here at the vineyards, and I think people are still sort of processing and haven't gotten to that point yet. But I do think that angle will rise as we get a better picture of how many lives were lost here and what could have been done to have prevented some of that loss.
And do you anticipate that there will be any kind of discussion around the political context with the defunding of NOAA and weather forecasting for climate skeptic reasons?
Certainly, inevitably, that those are the types of issues that will come up as the.
Bro, they're going to cynically do the same thing that they did with mass shootings, where they say, how dare you politicize this? I can see it now. They're going to be like, right now, we're too busy with the recovery efforts, so we're not going to be talking about this, but we will remember what all the Democrats said in the meantime, making this into a political football game when it's like, dude, you literally did this. Like, what the do you mean?
Days continue as search and rescue turns into recovery efforts. I do think that that'll probably be part of the conversation, but certainly not yet what's happening here. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are on social media debating that right now, and defending the National Weather Service. But right now, that is not the conversation that is dominating.
How confident are authorities that the missing people, the missing girls, may be found?
They're making every effort. There have already been sort of miraculous survival stories that have emerged. A woman who was swept almost 20 miles from where she was camping with her family survived by clinging to a tree. I think there is quite a bit of hope, but as we get into deeper into the hours since this tragedy struck, certainly hope is waning.
Arelis Hernandez, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. We're grateful.
Thank you.
And we continue to follow breaking news out of Central Texas. With this hour, a desperate search and rescue effort continues for dozens of people.
This is also like, even if you do a correct autopsy, a correct assessment, and you find out that like the defunding of these agencies did not play a role in this at all, which is highly unlikely because it always plays a role. But let's say they do an autopsy and the autopsy shows that it was because of the severity of this event, that even if there were more people that were able to inform people in proper time, that that there would still be plenty of people that got swept away. Okay, then we have to have a larger conversation about how these extreme weather events are, I guess, no longer extreme, that it is just a part of our everyday reality. And therefore, we have to figure out why it's happening. It's that simple.
Missing after floodwaters inundated an area north of San Antonio. Among the missing, 27 young girls from a camp, Camp Mystic, one of many summer camps along the Guadalupe River. And this morning, another round of heavy rainfall triggered more flash flood emergencies in the region. Hundreds have been rescued, including this person who was clinging to a light pole. Officials say at least 27 people have died, 9 children and 18 adults. Among the fatalities, 9-year-old Janie Hunt, her mother confirming to CNN today that the young girl who was among the 24 missing from Camp Mystic has died. And also confirmed killed Jane Ragsdale. She was director at another girls' camp, Heart of the Hills, which was not in session at the time. Ragsdale is described as the heart and soul of that camp. We've got a team of correspondents and
It's so sad, dude.
meteorologists covering these fast-moving developments. Let's begin with CNN's Ed Lavandera in hard-hit Hunt, Texas. Ed.
Hi, Frederica. Well, this morning as we were arriving here in Hunt, Texas, we were surveying some areas that were heavily damaged. And from just beyond this ledge that went down in toward the edge of the river, we heard a man calling out Joyce Catherine. Joyce Catherine. Happened several times, and we kind of followed the voice, and that's where we met Ty Baden. He is a father of 21-year-old Joyce Catherine Baden. His daughter had come out here to spend the July 4th weekend with 3 other friends in a home just along the river. And they lost contact with the group around 4 a.m. early Friday morning. Ty Baden has spent the morning walking. By the time we met him, he'd already walked along about a mile, had come across the body of another young victim and called it in to 911. And this is a father desperately searching for his 21-year-old daughter in hopes that he would stumble upon a miracle.
Your daughter was here with 2 friends?
Yeah, 3.
3 friends.
You know, and
so it's 4 of them.
Correct. And she and the young man, they went to elementary school and high school together, and one of her friends, Ella Cahill, that's her boyfriend, Aiden is, they went to school through high school, so they've known each other a long time. The other girl, her name is Reese. I can't remember her last name right now. She is Ella's roommate at UTSA, so we've never met her or her parents, but God bless her, and we pray that all 4 of them are still alive.
All 4 are missing?
Yes, they're all missing, and you know, it's been 4 o'clock yesterday morning that we were told that, you know, they were on the phone with Aiden's dad, who they own the house where they were. It was a very nice house, no longer there. And Aiden said, hey, you know, I've got to go. I got to help Ella and Reese. So he gave the phone to.
Remember, in the backdrop of this also, FEMA is set to be underfunded. It's already underfunded. It's set to be defunded. And some of the disaster, not the disaster relief, but the pre-existing FEMA expenditures, some of the pre-existing FEMA expenditures have been reallocated to the Alligator Auschwitz. That's where some of that money is going. You think about the National Guard, right? You think about the National Guard and where those funds, where those funds should be prioritized. Trump's too busy using National Guards in in the state of Florida or the state of California as a part of his like immigrant apprehension schemes. You know, that's where these that's where the effective systems are being used. The existing like military function is being used in that regard, in that direction. Great.